Sic Semper Tyrannis News. I'm your host, Mark Matheny. Tonight we are going to be covering the State of the Disunion address with Biden at the helm, which is a scary thought. So that's going to be happening tonight. I just wanted to come on and let you know. So the broadcast that I'll probably be broadcasting from on that State of the Union will be probably ABC News. But right now, I'm working on, I wanted to let everybody know who is watching the show that I am working on a short film that has to do with Ukraine and a little bit of the history of it that I'll try to have released here within the next couple days. Hopefully that'll be the case. It's a lot of work, so so it's taken a little bit of time to do, but I will get that up and running. Right now, we know that we still got this push in the Ukraine. Got a couple brewskis here. We still got this push in Ukraine by the Russians going in. And they're on their way to Kiev, apparently. I was having some soup here. My wife made some delicious chicken noodle soup, or it wasn't chicken noodles, chicken dumpling soup. So that's what this bowl was there. So I'm trying to hide that a little bit. But yes, we're witnessing that. And I even have one friend who says that he believes that they'll be taking over Kiev as the State of the Union address occurs, which that would be interesting if that happens. But meanwhile, you have the other convoy, not only the one in Canada, but now a convoy moving to Washington, D.C. And, but we're seeing that this war with Russia basically is being used as another part of their catalyst of these globalists to push the Great Reset. And so that's what's happening. There is a report that Putin has also moved his family into a Siberian underground city designed to survive nuclear war. That's whether that's true or not. And then also there was a report that was on InfoWars showing that there's, in the Ukraine, they have given out weapons. The President Zelensky of Ukraine has given out weapons to a lot of the civilians there. And as a result, there is now starting to be anarchy and violence taking over in the streets of Ukraine in Kiev. And there was some footage that came out of some of the chaos, and it was showing some Ukrainian civilians running around, and in one case, some armed men who have received these weapons shooting a citizen. So, and I'll show you this, and this is from a gentleman who talks a little bit about this in Ukraine, what's going on. He's an American citizen, but he's in Kiev. He does business there, and he has family there. And he's walking the streets there, and he's talking a little bit about it. And I'll show you a little bit of that. But then at the end of that video, it shows some a graphic scene of someone being basically shot. So it is a warning for those out there watching the show. So I'm going to set that up now.
In my opinion, one of the smartest moves anybody...
This is at band.video, so I am going to show you that video now. Here it is. Let me start that back up here. here is the report from this man who lives or is living in
It's
Kiev.
very clear that the Russian army did not want to hurt the people. And I can say this because they didn't bomb the cell phone towers. They didn't bomb the electrical generators, the power stations, the power grid. The people have running water, have internet, have telephony, have electricity. Life is going on as normal here in Kiev, right? Which is, like I said, the eye of the storm. And in Kharkov, the same thing. There's telephony, electricity, water. Everything seems to be going fine over there. Internet. The problem is that all the information that we're getting from the internet, nobody's really sure how accurate it is, where it's coming from. I've seen the same video and people saying it's fake video, then people saying it's real video, people saying it's from one location, people saying it's from another location. Nobody knows. I'm kind of rambling, I suppose, but this is, I can feel that this is a start. Look at all the mainstream media. Look at them all the corporate media having a high old time. Yeah, the corporate media, the system pigs. This is the MSM, the mainstream media, having a good old time on the dime of their corporate masters, making money off the suffering of others, having caused this suffering. Yeah, those are the fucking system pigs. The purveyors of fake news and the narrative. Yeah? I hope you see them. A good look at those system pigs. Huh? Fucking pigs, man. Pigs. They purvey fake news. They drum up hysteria on information that they know is fake. And hysteria based on fake news becomes real actions in the real world, and then they come like fucking hyenas to feed off the corpse of Ukraine. That's what they're doing. God, I fucking hate the system pigs. Every last one of them. Every fucking cop who follows the orders of these pigs who lead us. Every so-called journalist of the mainstream media. They are system pigs and they are the enemy. Never, never fucking forget that. It's Kiev, Saturday morning, February 28th, 2022. 2022, as you can see, that's the VIP club of the Premier Palace Hotel. I'm walking down to Kreshchatyk, and I'm going to the supermarket to get some food. They've announced that it's okay to go to supermarkets and pharmacies. The problem that we're having is that because of the weapons that the Zelensky regime handed out willy-nilly in the last few days, a lot of criminals have these military-grade weapons, quite frankly. And so there's been robberies, there's been looting, there's been rapes, there's been all kinds of havoc because of these criminals. And it's known for a fact that these a lot of the shooting that went on last night in Kiev had nothing to do with the Russians. The Russians were 10 kilometers or more away from these shootings, so it was clearly probably gang-related, gang settling scores and shooting one another. That's something that the Western media is not talking about, of how the Zelensky regime, by handing out weapons, has basically given weapons to all the criminal elements in the city. And the criminal elements in the city are, first of all, figuring out their dominance hierarchy and this anarchy that the government has created. And soon enough, once that's settled, they'll start targeting the civilians. That's what the Zelensky regime has done, okay? So let's not pretend otherwise. These people have they are creating chaos in Ukraine in the name of, the people fighting against the Russians. It's absurd, it's irresponsible, and it will only hurt the Ukrainian people. And I've come to the conclusion that the Zelensky regime is evil. And I live in Ukraine. I have Ukrainian family members. I think that the Ukrainian people are a brave, gentle, and wonderful people. But at this time, I think that the Zelensky regime has gone insane.
Вот у меня с балкона комендантский час. Чувак вышел на улицу. Ебашь его в голову, быстрее! Стреляй по нам!
And so
We are fighting
that
a new world order.
is
Not want to hurt the people.
that was
And-
shocking footage. If you haven't seen that before, this is, they're starting to bring chaos there. And if you've been following some of my shows, I have explained what's happening in Ukraine and the reasons that Russia has chosen to go in and so on. Now, there are reports that there's a large convoy of Russian vehicles, some reports saying up to 40 miles long, some saying longer than that are headed to Kiev. And so there is there's that going on. And but it seems that the United States seems to be the ones who are more or less stoking the problems in that area and provoking Russia, in my opinion. And there's a lot of reasons for understanding that and believing that. But like I said, we are going to go to currently the address, which is coming up here shortly. I'm going to set that up now. I'm pulling that up now. Let's trying to find it here real quick, guys. And so, Golden State Times. So if you haven't watched any of my videos on Rumble, make sure that you check out the Rumble channel. It should be starting soon. There was a Republican press briefing on Biden's State of the Union. I'm going to show you a little bit of that now. This was the Republican State of the Union. We'll kind of look at that as we wait for the president to speak. This was the Republican State of the Union response, I guess you could say.
Thank you, everyone, for being here today. The state of our union is in crisis because of Joe Biden. Tonight, President Biden will try to rewrite history of the past year and pass the buck, instead of taking responsibility for the failures of his radical far-left Democrat agenda. But the American people are smart. They know the truth that under President Joe Biden and Nancy Pelosi's one-party Democrat rule, the United States and now the world have faced crisis after crisis. The war on Ukraine represents one of the greatest foreign policy failures in modern history. For months, President Biden failed to engage in meaningful deterrence against Russian aggression. And just weeks ago, his administration actually lobbied against Republican efforts to sanction Russia. On day one of his presidency, Joe Biden killed the Keystone XL pipeline and launched his war on American energy independence. And then, Joe Biden gifted Putin the Nord Stream 2 pipeline while importing a record amount of oil from Russia last year. Mr. President, it's time to unleash American energy independence. And at home, Americans are paying the price for Joe Biden's anti-energy agenda that has caused the price of gas to skyrocket. In my home state of New York, people are paying over $1 more on a gallon today than they were just 1 year ago, making it the highest since Joe Biden was last in the White House. Our southern border is being overrun. Violent criminals and deadly drugs are freely flowing across our southern border because of Biden and House Democrats' open border policies. Every state in our nation has become a border state because of this crisis. And of course, crime is skyrocketing across the country because of Democrats' defund the police policies and rhetoric, making all our communities less safe. And inflation is at a 40-year high and hurting every American family. Joe Biden and House Democrats are responsible for this State of the Union in crisis. I'm now going to turn it over to the Republican whip, Steve Scalise.
Thank you, Elise. Let me first send my prayers to the people of Ukraine. We're seeing such inspiring bravery, but there is harsh brutality. The barbaric invasion by Putin is having a devastating impact. And I know my colleague, Victoria Sparks, is going to talk about that later. We pray for her and the things that she's heard from the ground. As we listen tonight to the State of the Union, which is in crisis on so many fronts, I hope President Biden talks about what he will do to work with Republicans, because we have real plans to get control of inflation, to lower gas prices, to take away Putin's leverage on energy, to control our border, to get crime under control around the country and confront the defund the police and the mentality where they're actually letting people out of jails in so many cities. On all of these crises, we have put strong conservative ideas on the table, and President Biden refuses to work with us. But let me talk right now about Ukraine, because if President Biden wants to do something to help the people of Ukraine, there's some very specific actions he can take right now. Just look at some of the steps that President Biden took since he's been president that have given leverage to Vladimir Putin and put billions of dollars in his pocket to finance this war against Ukraine. Not only did he cancel the Keystone Pipeline, his administration hasn't approved a single new pipeline in America. He's okay with Nord Stream 2, it seemed like, for so many months. But then if you look, he put a moratorium on drilling on federal lands. And when the court struck it down just 2 weeks ago, think of how tone-deaf President Biden has been on energy. As Russia is moving over 100,000 troops onto the border of Ukraine, 2 weeks ago, President Biden issued a moratorium, a freeze on all new oil and gas drilling in America, begging Putin to produce more oil. Then, as we talked about, no permits for new pipelines. LNG, there's at least 4 to 6 LNG permits ready to go to send liquefied natural gas to our friends in Europe who could use that natural gas from America so they don't need to get it from Putin. Not one of those permits has been approved by the Biden administration because they're against American energy. They're not against all energy because they're begging OPEC and they're begging Putin through Russia to produce more, but they're shutting it down in America. He could turn that around today. And then, of course, to stop the regulatory attack on American energy that President Biden alone has put in place that he could reverse tonight. And I call on President Biden to take all of these steps immediately tonight, because not only will it help American families, but it will take away Putin's leverage. Think about this number. Today, between the United States, the UK, and the European Union, every single day, we are sending $700 million a day to Putin by buying his oil. $700 million a day going to Putin that we could reverse. Take that money out of his pockets. President Biden needs to stop financing Putin's war with Russian oil because he shut off the spigots of American energy. It's having devastating impacts on the people of Ukraine, but it's putting billions of dollars in Putin's pocket. Think about the number again, $700 million a day between the United States, European Union, and UK are going to Russia every single day. President Biden, these failed energy policies are having devastating impacts on Americans, but also on the people of Ukraine, because those policies are financing the war. With that, somebody who knows something about energy, my colleague from Oklahoma, Stephanie Bice.
Thank you so much, Steve. I hail from the great state of Oklahoma, the third largest producer in the country of oil and the fourth largest in natural gas. My state knows something about domestic energy. This administration has turned its back on American energy production. Instead, in 2021, the United States purchased 250 million barrels of oil from Russia at a cost of $18 billion. That money went to line the pockets of Vladimir Putin and Russian oligarchs. Instead of buying oil from our adversaries, this administration should help states like Oklahoma, North Dakota, and Texas do what we know best: produce affordable and reliable domestic energy for the nation. And this isn't just about production, though. It's also about pipelines. We must expedite the pipeline permitting process that at one time took roughly 6 months, but under this administration is now taking over 12. Energy is national security, and there has never been a more important time for the U.S. to be energy independent. Besides Oklahoma and Texas being top oil producing states, we have something else in common. Our communities are dealing with the influx of migrants across our southern border. Over 2 million illegal immigrants crossed into the United States over the last year, and these numbers are growing. On top of this, it is no coincidence that fentanyl overdoses are now the leading cause of death for adults 18 to 45. This deadly drug, which predominantly comes from China, is pouring across an open southern border and killing thousands of Americans. We cannot defend other countries' borders while ignoring our own. Thank you, and at this time, I'd like to bring up Debbie Lesko.
Thank you, Stephanie. Good morning. I'm Debbie Lesko from the great state of Arizona. Tonight, Americans are going to ask 2 questions. Am I better off under Biden and the Democrat control? And do I trust what Biden is going to tell us? I think clearly the answer is no.
Remember us, the 2 armed Texans? The media wanted you to...
In little over a year, under
Sorry
one
about that
party
commercial there.
Democrat rule, the State of the Union is in a crisis. Gasoline, grocery, and energy prices are up. Crime has risen through the roof. The border, my state and other states, is wide open. And war has broken out in Ukraine. Remember when Biden promised us he wasn't going to leave one American behind in Afghanistan? And then he did? Remember when candidate Biden criticized Trump, saying if a president is responsible for over 200,000 COVID deaths, he shouldn't be a president? And then under Biden, there was more COVID deaths in 2021 than in 2020? Remember when Biden promised to hold China accountable for COVID, and then he didn't? Not one hearing.
So it looks like Biden is
promised
coming
there
out. Let
wouldn't
me
be a
switch
vaccine
over
mandate? Remember that one?
to that.
And
now
then
the State of the Union.
Presidency. And Mary Bruce, who's in the chamber tonight, we're watching as the Vice President Kamala Harris and the Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi, await the president's arrival.
David, the scene here is surreal because it just feels so normal. It strikes me we are about to see Joe Biden do something
So
I don't think we've seen him do anywhere.
We're still
as
waiting,
president, and that is to work
they're
a crowded
getting
room.
set up. I want to see if the other broadcast is on, guys. What do you think Biden is going to say today? What do you think he's going to do? Here he is. Let's go to that now.
Of Europe, a massacre being perpetuated by a country that has thousands of nuclear weapons aimed at the United States. Now, Russia is facing punishing sanctions just as Joe Biden said they would, but it clearly hasn't been enough. It hasn't stopped Vladimir Putin.
The president at the podium giving a copy of his speech to the Speaker of the House, of course, Nancy Pelosi, and to the Vice President, Kamala Harris. Smiling, and one thing very different this year, the president shaking many hands on his way down that aisle. He is expected to start this address.
Members of Congress, I have the high privilege and distinct honor of presenting to you the President of the United States.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you all very much. Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you all very, very much. Thank you. Please. Thank you so much. Madam Speaker, Madam Vice President, our First Lady and Second Gentleman, members of Congress and the Cabinet, Justices of the Supreme Court, my fellow Americans. Last year, COVID-19 kept us apart. This year, we're finally together again. Tonight, we meet as Democrats, Republicans, and Independents, but most importantly, as Americans, with the duty to one another, to America, to the American people, to the Constitution, and an unwavering resolve that freedom will always triumph over tyranny. Thank you. 6 days ago, Russia's Vladimir Putin sought to shake the very foundations of the free world, thinking he could make it bend to his menacing ways. But he badly miscalculated. He thought he could roll into Ukraine and the world would roll over. Instead, he met with a wall of strength he never anticipated or imagined. He met the Ukrainian people. President Zelensky, to every Ukrainian, their fearlessness, their courage, their determination literally inspires the world. Groups of citizens blocking tanks with their bodies, everyone from students to retirees to teachers, turned soldiers defending their homeland. And in this struggle, President Zelensky said in his speech to the European Parliament, "Light will win over darkness." The Ukrainian ambassador to the United States is here tonight, sitting with the First Lady. Let each of us, if you're able to stand and send an unmistakable signal to the world of Ukraine. Thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. She's bright, she's strong, she's resolved. Yes, we, the United States of America, stand with the Ukrainian people. Throughout our history, we've learned this lesson. When dictators do not pay a price for their aggression, they cause more chaos. They keep moving, and the cost, the threats to America and America to the world keeps rising. That's why the NATO alliance was created, to secure peace and stability in Europe after World War II. The United States is a member, along with 29 other nations. It matters. American diplomacy matters. American resolve matters. Putin's latest attack on Ukraine was premeditated and totally unprovoked. He rejected repeated efforts at diplomacy. He thought the West and NATO wouldn't respond. He thought he could divide us at home, in this chamber, in this nation. He thought he could divide us in Europe as well. But Putin was wrong. We are ready. We are united, and that's what we did. We stayed united. We prepared extensively and carefully. We spent months building coalitions of other freedom-loving nations in Europe and the Americas, from America to the Asian and African continents, to confront Putin. Like many of you, I spent countless hours unifying our European allies. We shared with the world in advance what we knew Putin was planning and precisely how we would try to falsify and justify his aggression. We countered Russia's lies with the truth. And now that he's acted, the free world is holding him accountable, along with 27 members of the European Union, including France, Germany, Italy, as well as countries like the United Kingdom, Canada, Japan, Korea, Australia, New Zealand, and many others. Even Switzerland are inflicting pain on Russia and supporting the people of Ukraine. Putin is now isolated from the world more than he has ever been. Together, along with our allies, we are right now enforcing powerful economic sanctions. We're cutting off Russia's largest banks in the international financial system, preventing Russia's central bank from defending the Russian ruble, making Putin's $630 billion war fund worthless. We're choking Russia's access. To technology that will sap its economic strength and weaken its military for years to come. Tonight, I say to the Russian oligarchs and the corrupt leaders who built billions of dollars off this violent regime, no more. The United States, I mean it. The United States Department of Justice is assembling a dedicated task force to go after the crimes of the Russian oligarchs. We're joining with European allies to find and seize their yachts, their luxury apartments, their private jets. We're coming for your ill-begotten gains. And tonight, I'm announcing that we will join our allies in closing off American airspace to all Russian flights, further isolating Russia and adding additional squeeze on their economy. He has no idea what's coming. The ruble has already lost 30% of its value. The Russian stock market has lost 40% of its value, and trading remains suspended. The Russian economy is reeling, and Putin alone is the one to blame. Together with our allies, we're providing support to the Ukrainians in their fight for freedom. Military assistance, economic assistance, humanitarian assistance. We're giving more than $1 billion of direct assistance to Ukraine, and will continue to aid the Ukrainian people as they defend their country and help ease their suffering. But let me be clear. Our forces are not engaged and will not engage in the conflict with Russian forces in Ukraine. Our forces are not going to Europe to fight Ukraine, but to defend our NATO allies in the event that Putin decides to keep moving west. For that purpose, we have mobilized American ground forces, air squadrons, ship deployments to protect NATO countries, including Poland, Romania, Latvia, Lithuania, and Estonia. And as I've made crystal clear, the United States and our allies will defend every inch of territory that is NATO territory with the full force of our collective power. Every single inch. And we're clear-eyed. The Ukrainians are fighting back with pure courage. But the next few days, weeks, and months will be hard on them. Putin has unleashed violence and chaos. But while he may make gains on the battlefield, he'll pay a continuing high price over the long run. And a pound of Ukrainian people, the proud, proud people, pound for pound, ready to fight with every inch of energy they have. They've known 30 years of independence, have repeatedly shown that they will not tolerate anyone who tries to take their country backwards. To all Americans, I'll be honest with you, as I always promised I would be. A Russian dictator invading a foreign country has cost around the world. And I'm taking robust action to make sure the pain of our sanctions is targeted at the Russian economy and that we use every tool at our disposal to protect American businesses and consumers. Tonight, I can announce the United States has worked with 30 other countries to release 60 million barrels of oil from reserves around the world. America will lead that effort, releasing 30 million barrels of our own strategic petroleum reserve. And we stand ready to do more if necessary, united with our allies. These steps will help blunt gas prices here at home, but I know news about what's happening can seem alarming to all Americans. But I want you to know we're going to be okay. We're going to be okay. When the history of this era is written, Putin's war in Ukraine will have left Russia weaker and the rest of the world stronger. Well, while it shouldn't have taken something so terrible for people around the world to see what's at stake, now everyone sees it clearly. We see the unity among leaders of nations, a more unified Europe, a more unified West. We see unity among the people who are gathering in cities and large crowds around the world, even in Russia, to demonstrate their support for the people of Ukraine. In the battle between democracy and autocracies, democracies are rising to the moment, and the world is clearly choosing the side of peace and security. This is the real test, and it's going to take time. So let us continue to draw inspiration from the iron will of the Ukrainian people. To our fellow Ukrainian Americans who forged the deep bond that connects our two nations, we stand with you. We stand with you. Putin may circle Kyiv with tanks, but he'll never gain the hearts and souls of the Iranian people. He'll never extinguish their love of freedom, and he will never weaken the resolve of the free world. We meet tonight in an America that has lived through two of the hardest years this nation has ever faced. The pandemic has been punishing, and so many families are living paycheck to paycheck, struggling to keep up with the rising cost of food, gas, housing, and so much more. I understand, like many of you did. My dad had to leave his home in Scranton, Pennsylvania to find work. So like many of you, I grew up in a family when the price of food went up, it was felt throughout the family. It had an impact. That's when one of the first things I did as president was fight to pass the American Rescue Plan. Because people were hurting, we needed to act, and we did. Few pieces of legislation have done more at a critical moment in our history to lift us out of a crisis. It fueled our efforts to vaccinate the nation and combat COVID-19, delivered immediate economic relief to tens of millions of Americans. It helped put food on the table. Remember those long lines of cars waiting for hours just to get a box of food put in their trunk. It cut the cost of health care insurance. And as my dad used to say, it gave the people just a little bit of breathing room. Unlike the $2 trillion tax cut passed in the previous administration that benefited the top 1% of Americans, the American Rescue Plan helped working people and left no one behind. Folks, and it We created jobs, lots of jobs. In fact, our economy created over 6.5 million new jobs just last year. More jobs in 1 year than ever before in the history of the United States of America. The economy grew at a rate of 5.7 last year, the strongest growth rate in 40 years. And the first step in bringing fundamental change to our economy that hasn't worked for working people in this nation for too long. For the past 40 years, we were told that tax break for those at the top and benefits would trickle down and everyone would benefit. But that trickle-down theory led to a weaker economic growth, lower wages, bigger deficits, and a widening gap between the top and everyone else in nearly a century. Look, Vice President Harris and I ran for office, and I realize we have fundamental disagreements on this, but ran for office with a new economic vision for America. Invest in America, educate Americans, grow the workforce, build the economy from the bottom up and the middle out, not from the top down, because we know, because we know when the middle class grows, the poor will way up and the wealthy do very well. America used to have the best roads, bridges, and airports on earth, and now our infrastructure is ranked 13th in the world. We won't be able to compete for the jobs of the 21st century if we don't fix it. That's why it was so important to pass the bipartisan infrastructure law. And I thank my Republican friends who joined to invest and rebuild America, the single biggest investment in history. It was a bipartisan effort, and I want to thank the members of both parties who worked to make it happen. We're done talking about infrastructure weeks. We're now talking about an infrastructure decade. And look, it's going to transform America, to put us on a path to win the economic competition of the 21st century that we face with the rest of the world, particularly China. I've told Xi Jinping it's never been a good bet to bet against the American people. We'll create good jobs for millions of Americans, modernizing roads, airports, ports, waterways, all across America. And we'll do it to withstand the devastating effects of climate change and promote environmental justice. We'll build a national network of 500,000 electric vehicle charging stations. Begin to replace the poisonous lead pipes so every child, every American has clean water to drink at home and at school. We're going to provide affordable, high-speed internet for every American, rural, suburban, urban, and tribal communities. 4,000 projects have already been announced. Many of you have announced them in your districts. And tonight, I'm announcing that this year, we will start fixing over 65,000 miles of highway and 1,500 bridges in disrepair. And folks, when we use taxpayers' dollars to rebuild America, we're going to do it by buying America. Buy American products. Support American jobs. The federal government spends about $600 billion a year to keep this country safe and secure. There's been a law on the books for almost a century to make sure taxpayers' dollars support American jobs and businesses. Every administration, Democrat and Republican, says they'll do it, but we're actually doing it. We'll buy America to make sure everything from the deck of an aircraft carrier to the steel on highway guardrails is made in America from beginning to end. All of it. All of it. But folks, to compete for the jobs of the future, we also need a level playing field with China and other competitors. That's why it's so important to pass the Bipartisan Innovation Act sitting in Congress that will make record investments in emerging technologies and American manufacturing. We used to invest almost 2% of our GDP in research and development. We don't now. China is. Let me give you one example why it's so important to pass. If you travel 20 miles east of Columbus, Ohio, you'll find 1,000 empty acres of land. It won't look like much, but if you stop and look closely, you'll see a field of dreams, the ground on which America's future will be built. That's where Intel, the American company that helped build Silicon Valley, is going to build a $20 billion semiconductor megasite, up to 8 state-of-the-art factories in one place, 10,000 new jobs. And in those factories, the average job about $135,000 a year. Some of the most sophisticated manufacturing in the world to make computer chips the size of a fingertip, the power of the world in everyday lives, from smartphones, technology, the internet, technology is yet to be invented. But that's just the beginning. Intel CEO Pat Gelsinger, who is here tonight, I don't know where Pat is. Pat, there you go. Pat, stand up. Pat. Pat came to see me and he told me they're ready to increase their investment from $20 billion to $100 billion. That would be the biggest investment in manufacturing in American history. And all they're waiting for is for you to pass this bill. So let's not wait any longer. Send it to my desk, I'll sign it, and we'll really take off in a big way. And folks, Intel is not alone. There's something happening in America. Just look around and you'll see an amazing story. The rebirth of pride that comes from stamping products made in America. The revitalization of American manufacturing. Companies are choosing to build new factories here when just a few years ago they would have gone overseas. That's what's happening. Ford is investing $11 billion in electric vehicles, creating 11,000 jobs across the country. GM is making the largest investment in its history, $7 billion to build electric vehicles, creating 4,000 jobs in Michigan. All told, 369,000 new manufacturing jobs were created in America last year alone. Folks, powered by people I've met like JoJo Burgess, from generations of union steelworkers in Pittsburgh, who's here tonight. Where are you, JoJo? There you go. Thanks, buddy. As Ohio Senator Sherrod Brown says, it's time to bury the label Rust Belt. It's time to see what used to be called the Rust Belt become the home of a significant resurgence of manufacturing. And with all the bright spots in our economy, record job growth, higher wages, too many families are struggling to keep up with their bills. Inflation is robbing them of gains they thought otherwise they would be able to feel. I get it. That's why my top priority is getting prices under control. Look, our economy roared back faster than almost anyone predicted. But the pandemic meant that businesses had a hard time hiring enough people because of the pandemic to keep up production in their factories. So you didn't have people making those beams that went into buildings because they were out. The factory was closed. The panic also disrupted the global supply chain. Factories close. When that happens, it takes longer to make goods and get them to the warehouses, to the stores, and prices go up. Look at cars last year. 1/3 of all the inflation was because of automobile sales. There weren't enough semiconductors to make all the cars that people wanted to buy. And guess what? Prices of automobiles went way up. especially used vehicles as well. And so we have a choice. One way to fight inflation is to drive down wages and make Americans poorer. I think I have a better idea to fight inflation. Lower your costs, not your wages. And folks, that means make more cars and semiconductors in America, more infrastructure and innovation in America, more goods moving faster and cheaper in America, more jobs where you can earn a good living in America. Instead of relying on foreign supply chains, let's make it in America. Look, economists call this increasing the productive capacity of our economy. I call it building a better America. My plan to fight inflation will lower your costs and lower the deficit. 17 Nobel laureates in economics said my plan will ease long-term inflationary pressures. Top business leaders, and I believe most Americans support the plan. And here's the plan. First, cut the cost of prescription drugs. We pay more for the same drug produced by the same company in America than any other country in the world. Just look at insulin. 1 in 10 Americans has diabetes. In Virginia, I met a 13-year-old boy, the handsome young man standing up there, Joshua Davis. He and his dad both have type 1 diabetes, which means they need insulin every single day. Insulin costs about $10 a vial to make. That's what it costs the pharmaceutical company. But drug companies charge families like Joshua and his dad up to 30 times that amount. I spoke with Joshua's mom. Imagine what it's like to look at your child who needs insulin to stay healthy and have no idea how in God's name you're going to be able to pay for it. What it does to your family, but what it does to your dignity, your ability to look your child in the eye, to be the parent you expect yourself to be. I really mean to think about that. That's what I think about. You know, yesterday, Joshua's here tonight, but yesterday was his birthday. Happy birthday, buddy, by the way. For Joshua and 200,000 other young people with type 1 diabetes, let's cap the cost of insulin at $35 a month, so everyone can afford it. And drug companies will do very, very well, their profit margin. And while we're at it, I know we have great disagreements on this floor with this. Let's let Medicare negotiate the price of prescription drugs. They already set the price for VA drugs. Look, the American Rescue Plan is helping millions of families with Affordable Care Act plans to save them $2,400 a year on their health premiums. Let's close the coverage gap and make these savings permanent. And second, let's cut energy costs for families, an average of $500 a year by combating climate change. Let's provide an investment tax credits to weatherize your home and your business, to be energy efficient and get a tax credit for it. Double America's clean energy production in solar, wind, and so much more. Lower the price of electric vehicles, saving another $80 a month that you're not going to have to pay at the pump. Folks, the third thing we can do to change the standard of living for hardworking folks is cut the cost of child care. Cut the cost of child care. Folks, If you live in a major city in America, you pay up to $14,000 a year for child care per child. I was a single dad for 5 years, raising 2 kids. I had a lot of help, though. I had a mom, a dad, a brother, and a sister that really helped. But middle class and working folks shouldn't have to pay more than 7% of their income to care for the young children. My plan would cut the cost of child care in half for most families and help parents, including millions of women who left the workforce during the pandemic because they couldn't afford child care, to be able to get back to work, generating economic growth. But my plan doesn't stop there. It also includes home and long-term care, more affordable housing, pre-K for 3- and 4-year-olds. All these will lower costs to families. And under my plan, nobody, let me say this again, nobody earning less than $400,000 a year will pay an additional penny in new taxes. Not a single penny. I may be wrong, but my guess is if we took a secret ballot in this floor, that we'd all agree that the present tax system ain't fair. We have to fix it. I'm not looking to punish anybody, but let's make corporations and wealthy Americans start paying their fair share. Look, last year, and like Chris Coons and Tom Carper and my distinguished Congresswoman, we come from the land of corporate America. There are more corporations incorporated in America than every other state in America combined. And I still won 36 years in a row. The point is, even they understand they should pay just a fair share. Last year, 55 of the Fortune 500 companies earned $40 billion in profit and paid 0 in federal taxes. Now look, it's not fair. That's why I proposed a 15% minimum tax rate for corporations. We've got, and that's why in the G7 and other meetings overseas, we're able to put together, I was able to be somewhat helpful, 130 countries agree on a global minimum tax rate. So companies can't get out of paying their taxes at home by shipping jobs and factories overseas. It'll raise billions of dollars. That's why I propose closing loopholes for the very wealthy who pay a lower tax rate than a teacher and a firefighter. So that's my plan, but we'll go in more detail later. We will grow the economy, lower the cost of families. So what are we waiting for? Let's get this done. We all know we've got to make changes. Folks,
yeah, it's called Agenda 2030, the Great Reset, people.
Confirm my nominees for the Federal Reserve, which plays a critical role in fighting inflation. My plan will not only lower costs and give families a fair shot, it will lower the deficit. The previous administration not only ballooned the deficit with those tax cuts for the very wealthy and corporations, it undermined the watchdogs, the job of those to keep pandemic relief funds being wasted. Remember we had those debates about whether or not those watchdogs should be able to see every day how much money was being spent, where was it going to the right place? But in my administration, the watchdogs are back. And we're going to go after the criminals who stole billions of relief money meant for small business and millions of Americans. And tonight I'm announcing that the Justice Department will soon name a chief prosecutor for pandemic fraud. And look, I think we all agree, thank you. By the end of this year, the deficit will be down to less than half of what it was before I took office. The only president ever to cut the deficit by more than $1 trillion in a single year. Lowering your cost also meant demanding more competition. I'm a capitalist, but capitalism without competition is not capitalism. Capitalism without competition is exploitation. It drives up profits. When corporations have to compete, their profits go up and your prices go up when they don't have to compete. Small businesses and family farmers and ranchers, I need not tell some of my Republican friends from those states. Guess what? You got 4 basic meat packing facilities. That's it. You play with them or you don't get to play at all. And you pay a hell of a lot more. A hell of a lot more because there's only 4. See what's happening with ocean carriers moving goods in and out of America. During the pandemic, about half a dozen or less foreign-owned companies raised prices by as much as 1,000% and made record profits. Tonight, I'm announcing a crackdown on those companies overcharging American businesses and consumers. And folks, and as Wall Street firms take over more nursing homes, quality in those homes has gone down and costs have gone up. That ends on my watch. Medicare is going to set higher standards for nursing homes and make sure your loved ones get the care they deserve and that they inspect and they will look at closely. We're also going to cut costs to keep the economy going strong and giving workers a fair shot, provide more training and apprenticeships, hire them based on skills, not just their degrees. Let's pass the Paycheck Fairness Act and paid leave. Raise the minimum wage to $15 an hour and extend the child tax credit so no one has to raise a family in poverty. Let's increase Pell Grants, increase our historic support for HBCUs, and invest in what Jill, our First Lady who teaches full-time, calls America's best-kept secret, community colleges. Look, let's pass the PRO Act. When a majority of workers want to form a union, they shouldn't be able to be stopped. When we invest in our workers and we build an economy from the bottom up and the middle out together, we can do something we haven't done in a long time. Build a better America. For more than 2 years, COVID has impacted every decision in our lives and the life of this nation. And I know you're tired, frustrated, and exhausted. That doesn't even count the close to 1 million people who sit at a dining room table or a kitchen table and look at an empty chair because they lost somebody. But I also know this, because of the progress we've made, because of your resilience and the tools that we have been provided by this Congress, tonight I can say we're moving forward safely back to more normal routines. We've reached a new moment in the fight against COVID-19, where severe cases are down to a level not seen since July of last year. Just a few days ago, the Center for Disease Control and Prevention issued a new mask guidelines. Under the new guidelines, most Americans and most of the country can now go mask-free. And based on projections, more of the country will reach a point across the next couple of weeks. And thanks to the progress we've made in the past year, COVID-19 no longer need control our lives. I know some are talking about living with COVID-19, but tonight I say that we never will just accept living with COVID-19. We'll continue to combat the virus as we do other diseases. And because this virus mutates and spreads, we have to stay on guard. And here are 4 common sense steps as we move forward safely, in my view. First, stay protected with vaccines and treatments. We know how incredibly effective vaccines are. If you're vaccinated and boosted, you have the highest degree of protection. We'll never give up on vaccinating more Americans. Now, I know parents with kids under 5 are eager to see their vaccines authorized for their children. Scientists are working hard to get that done. We'll be ready with plenty of vaccines if and when they do. We're all ready. We are also ready with antiviral treatments. If you get COVID-19, the Pfizer pill reduces your chances of ending up in the hospital by 90%. I've ordered more pills than anyone in the world has. Pfizer is working overtime to get us 1 million pills this month and more than double that next month. And now we're launching the Test to Treat initiative, so people can get tested at a pharmacy, and if they prove positive, receive the antiviral pills on the spot at no cost. Folks, if you're immunocompromised or have some other vulnerability, we have treatments and free high-quality masks. We're leaving no one behind or ignoring anyone's needs as we move forward. On testing, we've made hundreds of millions of tests available, and you can order them for free to your doorstep. And we've already ordered free tests. If you already ordered free tests tonight, I'm announcing you can order another group of tests. Go to covidtest.gov starting next week, and you can get more tests. Second, we must prepare for new variants. Over the past, we've gotten much better at detecting new variants. If necessary, we'll be able to develop new vaccines within 100 days instead of maybe months or years. And if Congress provides the funds we need, we'll have new stockpiles of tests, masks, pills ready if needed. I can't promise a new variant won't come, but I can promise you we'll do everything within our power to be ready if it does. Third, we can end the shutdown of schools and businesses. We have the tools we need. It's time for America to get back to work and fill our great downtowns again with people. People working from home can feel safe and begin to return to their offices. We're doing that here in the federal government. The vast majority of federal workers will once again work in person. Our schools are open. Let's keep it that way. Our kids need to be in school. With 75% of adult Americans fully vaccinated and hospitalizations down by 77%, most Americans can remove their masks and stay in the classroom and move forward safely. We achieved this because we provided free vaccines, treatments, tests, and masks. Of course, continuing this costs money, so I'll not surprise you. I'll be back to see you all. And I'm going to soon send a request to Congress. The vast majority of Americans have used these tools and may want again. We may need them again, so I expect Congress, and I hope you'll pass that quickly. Fourth, we'll continue vaccinating the world. We've sent 475 million vaccine doses to 112 countries, more than any nation on earth. We won't stop, because you can't build a wall high enough to keep out a vaccine. The vaccine can stop the spread of these diseases. You know, we've lost so much in COVID-19. Time with one another. The worst of all, the loss of life. Let's use this moment to reset. So stop looking at COVID as a partisan dividing line. See it for what it is, a god-awful disease. Let's stop seeing each other as enemies and start seeing each other for who we are, fellow Americans. Look, we can't change how divided we've been. It was a long time in coming. But we can change how to move forward on COVID-19 and other issues that we must face together. I recently visited New York City Police Department days after the funerals of Officer Wilbur Mora and his partner, Officer Jason Rivera. They were responding to a 9/11 call when a man shot and killed them with a stolen gun. Officer Mora was 27 years old. Officer Rivera was 22 years old. Both Dominican Americans who grew up in the same streets that they later chose to patrol as police officers. I spoke with their families, and I told them that we were forever in debt for their sacrifices, and will carry on their mission to restore the trust and safety of every community deserves. Like some of you that have been around for a while, I've worked with you on these issues for a long time. I know what works. Investigating crime prevention and community policing, cops who walk the beat, who know the neighborhood, and who can restore trust and safety. Let's not abandon our streets or choose between safety and equal justice. Let's come together and protect our communities, restore trust, and hold law enforcement accountable. That's why the Justice Department has required body cameras, banned chokeholds, and restricted no-knock warrants for its officers. That's why the American Rescue Plan that you all provided $350 billion that cities, states, and counties can use to hire more police, invest in more proven strategies. Proven strategies like community violence interruption, trusted messengers, breaking the cycle of violence and trauma, and giving young people some hope. We should all agree the answer is not to defund the police, it's to fund the police. Fund them. Fund them. Fund them with resources and training. Resources and training they need to protect our communities. I ask Democrats and Republicans alike to pass my budget and keep our neighborhoods safe. And we'll do everything in my power to crack down on gun trafficking, of ghost guns that you can buy online, assemble at home, no serial numbers, can't be traced. I ask Congress to pass proven measures to reduce gun violence, pass universal background checks. Why should anyone on the terrorist list be able to purchase a weapon? Why? Why? And folks, ban assault weapons with high-capacity magazines that hold up to 100 rounds. You think the deer are wearing Kevlar vests? Look, repeal the liability shield that makes gun manufacturers the only industry in America that can't be sued. The only one. Imagine had we done that with the tobacco manufacturers. These laws don't infringe on the Second Amendment. They save lives. The most fundamental right in America is the right to vote and have it counted. And look, it's under assault. The entire election. Act, Voting Rights Act. Someone who dedicated his life to serve this country. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And we all know nominating someone to serve on the United States Supreme Court. As I did 4 days ago, I've nominated the Circuit Court of Appeals, Ketanji Brown Jackson, one of our nation's top legal minds, who continue in justice and private practice, including the fraternal order system. New technology like cutting-edge scans, so families fleeing persecution and violence, and supporting partners, a generation of immigrants to this land. Farm work, so businesses have workers they need. The immigration reform is
and the globalists, and he's under the IMF bank. He's taken all these damn loans from the IMF, and now he's basically stuck. Sanity. This is the problem. Biden basically is a dictator, and he's a leftist puppet, and you know they're trying to say that that Putin instigated this whole attack, but Ukraine attacking it, and he is also securing Crimea. But it's a globalist false flag. You know, it started in Kazakhstan. You saw what he was, rogue elements, and blocking the feed. They're blocking the feed. They're globalist tyranny. Biden talked about ill-gotten gain of the Russian oligarchs, but what about his ill-gotten gain? Him and his son, Hunter Biden, ill-gotten gain from China, ill-gotten gain from Ukraine. These guys are full of shit. And Zelensky is probably not charisma to investigate Hunter Biden. I think that the Biden administration is throwing Ukraine to the wolves, and they're pretending to fight against Russia, but they ain't cutting off oil from Russia. They ain't stopping nothing. They want you to believe that bullcrap. We're under a leftist regime. You got oil pipelines being shut down by these globalists. You have one in Israel. You have the United States Keystone Pipeline. You have the Nord Stream 2 pipeline. They're shutting down pipelines at everybody. Making the fuel prices high so they can come in and tell you they need to eliminate them. That's what that's for, people. And Congress are a bunch of sleeping dogs. Republicans and Democrats, they're basically uniting over. But that's what the globalist leftists are doing, people. I just took some notes. Food and housing, etc. And all these things, all these prices are going up. Everybody, you're sitting here believing this senile old-ass man that likes to... The trillions of dollars, people, $7 to $8 trillion or more. They've spent more in this administration in a year and a half than recovery is not a recovery. These jobs were lost during this so-called crisis. They're just coming back in. Biden and them ain't bringing no freaking jobs in. And so their new economic vision is really a great reset. You got 2/3 of this audience in this thing. The free stuff out to everybody. Canceling debts, canceling loans. You know, where's all this money going to come from and where's it going? I'm telling you, it's the globalist reset. It's the great reset that they're pushing. And he even stated it in this address. He used that term. It's crazy. There's not enough infrastructure. The infrastructure bill only about 1/8. And Biden and his son were taking all this money from China, taking it from Ukraine. There were no escalations. Economy was good. We had a net surplus in energy. I mean, this guy's full of crap. If you believe this guy, you go ahead. We're buying oil from OPEC. We're buying oil from Russia, you jackasses. It's insanity. Semiconductors, that's about the only good thing I heard tonight is, yes, in Ohio they're building a semiconductor plant. Okay, great. Biden is basically signing any damn thing that they put in front of him, people. So just be aware of that. The GDP is at 0%. The recession is imminent. You got oil prices at record high. Inflation is skyrocketing. Building a new world order. Trump also talked about lowering drug prices, and Joe Biden. And I'm sorry I had to cut into this, but I couldn't take any more of this crap. This guy's full of crap. The country is going to hell. They're over there. They've been attacking thousands of people. They don't want to talk about guns. I'm for the Second Amendment, but I'm just telling you now that's exactly what they're doing. They're trying to demonize the Russians. I'm not against the Russians. I'm not necessarily for the Russians. They're an independent country. They're a country that has sovereignty as well. They have a right to protect themselves, and they feel that the United, and they did it. And so, I mean, you know, this is why it's happening, people. So, anyway, for Sic Semper Tyrannis, and but I'm having some problems with my broadcasting, and you can see. While Biden was talking his nonsense, all the streaming was going great. But as soon as I started giving comment, we are being pushed into the Great Reset. Biden said it. We need to reset, he said. He was alluding to the Great Reset. Klaus Schwab and all of them are his handlers. This guy's on drugs. They probably... And you got the two hoes off.